Well, check it out. This is actually a video of my playthrough. Because I recorded an entire episode, and for some reason my mic was not on. So I'm going to voice over this episode. This is going to be the GULOWILDS commentary episode. Because I fucked up. Alright, I messed up. So we're going to fast forward through some of this. In this episode, I decided to go first to Ember Twin, because that's kind of where I ended off the episode before that. And I tried to get to the Quantum Moon again here. We zoom in on the Quantum Moon. You're trying to autopilot to the Quantum Moon. I figured, why not try again, right? Like, why not try and hit up that Quantum Moon and move and land right on it? I mean, again, I'm assuming this is the Quantum Moon. I don't know if it exactly is, but it's not marked on the map, and it fucking disappears as soon as you try and land on it and lose sight of it. So, like, right there, I literally just flew right through the Quantum Moon. So yeah, that didn't fucking lead to anything. So we get on Ember Twin. We landed. I did not forget to fucking take off my suit, or put on my suit, and I saw that there was a ship on Ember Twin, and I kind of had forgotten like which of the guys was on here, what the name of the person was. So I figured, you know what? Let me take out my signal scope, and let me see if I can find an instrument here somewhere. And I originally could not find an instrument. I was a little bit confused by that. But once I came down to this level, I got an unidentified signal. And it turned out to be about 100 meters away. And it was drums. It was fucking drums. So I'm like, okay, let me go to this rock column here. And let me find the drum guy. And look at him. He was the cutest fucking guy. I said Ryback was my favorite. But now it's Chert. He's such a small little guy. And he says, goodness, it's you. Hello, I take it it's your first launch. Welcome to the Hourglass Twins. Am I in the sand now? Hornfels asked me to update our star charts, so I'm out here observing. This is one of the best places in the solar system to spot astronomical events, you know. What's weird is I've actually seen a couple of supernovae today. Usually, I'd be fortunate to just see one. Keep an eye, or four, on the stars, and maybe you'll spot one yourself. I had trouble reading that one. So I tell him I'd found something, but I guess I didn't find anything in this loop yet. So what else did I ask him? How do I know if I've spotted a supernova? Supernovae look like extra bright stars to the naked eye, but if you zoom in with your signal scope, you can tell that they're actually enormous explosions. Massive stars go supernova at the very end of their lifespans, which is why it's so unusual to see two in a single day. Which again makes me think that the sun is turning into a supernova at the end of the time loop because it explodes. I wonder if some of these stars are older than we think. What should I do? Or what are you doing here? Right now I'm documenting stars. Hornfels noticed star charts are out of date, so they asked me to update them. Please don't tell the others I said this, but sometimes I think I'm the only traveler out here and interested in doing any science at all. Maybe don't tell Hornfels either. I think they're pretty deep in denial. What should I explore here? To be honest, I haven't left this lake bed. I don't mean to brag, but I'm really quite good with the little scout, so I've been taking pictures of everything from right here in my campsite. Have you seen the old shipwreck site on Ember Twin South Hemisphere? The one shooting a bright beam of light into the sky? It's not one of our own crashes, surprisingly enough. This one's a Nomai ship. This was the escape pod that I had found in the episode before, and took it down into the Sunless City, which is the civilization underground. You'll find Nomai ruins across the Twins, but strangely not a single settlement. Believe me, if there was one to see, I'd have seen it with my little scout. So where did they live? Not on the surface, clearly. Ember Twin is full of cave systems, though. Maybe the answer lies underground? How dangerous is... Oh, sorry. I said this one again. But yeah, I had figured that, I actually already found that Nomai settlement underground. How dangerous is that big column of falling sand? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it a 7 or 8. Awfully pretty, though. Right now, sand is flowing from ash twin to ember twin, but did you know the process eventually reverses? We're not completely sure why the sand flows back and forth between the twins, but seems to be a natural phenomena. Oh, if you'd like to see something interesting, check out the other twin once a little more of its sand drains off. Promise you won't be disappointed. I also thought it was kind of amazing how unhelpful these guys are. Like, they don't actually give that much information, So I figured I would, roast a marshmallow so that I can, roast a marshmallow on every single fucking planet. And then I decided to descend into this civilization-looking thing here. How do I just, fast forward, on VLC? Is there a way to do that? Is there a way to, instead of jumping forward, fast forward? I guess I'll look that up in a new tab. So I found another moon shard, another quantum moon shard. And I noticed some translated Nomai writing. Coleus is missing. He vanished from the lakebed cave. The one at the bottom of the dry lakebed at the North Pole several days ago, and how much air he had when he disappeared. I don't know how much air he had when he disappeared. I beg any friend reading this, help us to recover Coleus. This rock is very familiar. Did you travel here, my sedimentary friend? Because your unique color and texture appears identical to a rock I met before. Wasn't this the same rock fragment in the cave we found at the bottom of the dry lakebed at the North Pole? We plan to re-examine the northern lakebed cave. Maybe our friendly rock will meet us down there. An update. Melora and I went back to the lakebed cave and observed this rock again. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. We already know that these quantum rocks, are from the quantum moon, and they disappear when you don't look at them, right? Gotta find a way to fast forward on VLC. The bracket keys? Is that it? Let's just go to speed down here. So I decided that I would not fucking run into the sand column. Shift right arrow. Is it alt right? Control right? No. I guess I'll just have to fucking just jump a couple seconds, I guess. How to speed up playback VLC. Plus and minus keys. Whoa, fuck! Hello! Whoops! Okay, there we go. So it's plus and minus. Alright, so we continued going through our caves. Missed that whole sand column. And I decided to not explore the gravity cannon again because I had already done so. And then I found this interesting looking reactor or whatever the fuck this is, and I shot my scout launcher down there. And I saw some writings on the wall. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is where I want to go. I want to figure out what is inside this area. And I mean, it looked, of all the things on Ember Twin, it looked really, like untouched by the sand. And it also had that sign on the wall, that sigil that I keep seeing on every single planet, like those two little swirly things. I accidentally punctured my suit, because there's fucking cacti everywhere on this planet. There is definitely a door right here that I completely missed because I was just, I don't know, running around and not really looking close enough. So then I almost got fucking sucked into the sand column right here. That was fun. Almost got fucking destroyed by it. But as soon as I hit 3 minutes of oxygen remaining, I found this little grove of trees and a little tunnel entrance. So I decided that I would walk through this tunnel, and I realized, oh, I've fucking been here before. Like, this is the passage that leads to the underground city that's here. So I made my way through the cave. I thought that I remembered it pretty closely to what it was. These were all writings that I had seen before. But I realized, oh shit, the sand is already rising, so I don't really know if I could get there. But in some ways, like, being able to walk on top of the sand made it a little bit quicker to get where I needed to go, because I didn't have to travel downwards before traveling upwards again, and I could kind of just zoom up to the next level. But, once I got into that city, which I learned during this playthrough is called the Sunless City, into that Nomai civilization, there was not much shit that I could find. And also I forgot that this sand column right here to my left is like, just, you go through it and that's how you get there. There's not much left to explore because it's all covered by sand. So you kind of have to get there really quickly in order to actually like learn anything about it. So like, again, it's all already consumed by sand. So I was like, fuck it. Let me just go to the higher points and like see if I can, I don't know, learn anything in this loop. And I read this little translating thing. It says, I don't know why everyone says, oh, that's weird. It says, I don't know why everyone says the eye is important. They say it brought us to this solar system, but is that good? Dad told me lots of Nomai died when our clan came here. What if the eye wanted that to happen? What if the eye isn't something good? So I think I realized that some of those swirlies that have a little bit more jagged edges are like negative about the eye. I started losing fuel here as the sand was rising. So I figured, let me just salvage what I can. I tried to get into this door, but I missed it as the sand was going up, as you can see. I figured, let me get as much information as possible, before getting completely consumed by the sand. And from what I remember, I don't really think I found anything else. Like, I couldn't figure out another way in. I think I had missed all of my entrances in because it got covered by sand. I tried to close the door to prevent sand from coming in, but there's really no way to do that because of the windows and stuff. I started losing oxygen. I kind of was like, all right, let me just find my way out of here because it doesn't seem like there's anything that I could get. But I also realized that I had already gone in there. Like, this is the eye shrine that's on Ember Twin. And I had already been there and I had already read all of that stuff. So like, okay, let me go out and see if I can find anything else before I get completely consumed by the sand. And I believe I found like one more door. Yeah, this door right here. The gravity cannon. And I was like, okay, let me go out there and see if I can, I don't know, figure out something. A lot of ghost matter on this planet. I feel like there's got to be a way for you to get past the ghost matter at a certain point. And then I got to this like ledge that I couldn't get over because I had no more fuel. So then I think I just decided to meditate until the next loop. I tried to wait for a bit to see if the sand could get me up there, but I decided, you know what, let me just meditate. Let me just get past this loop. So that was the first loop that we went through. How far are we in here? Yeah, we're getting close to halfway. And I was like, okay, let me go straight back to Ember Twin. Let me see if I can do anything there. So we got back to Ember Twin. I saw the Quantum Moon again, and I think I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe the Quantum Moon starts here on the Twins. Because like every single time I go there, I feel like I see the Quantum Moon. I've realized that I'm not good at landing my ship. I'm just really not fucking good at that at all. So I decided to kind of jump right into the little canyon here. You know, I realized then, oh fuck, there's a door here. There's a literal door to this, you know, untouched by sand place that I saw earlier. Note, this door will need to remain closed for some time. Pi and I are running an experiment based on the extraordinary findings from the Whitehole station. Raimi and I will be running this experiment until one of us, specifically me, can prove the other one wrong. So although it's inconvenient, the lab currently can only be accessed by the path from the Sunless City. An update, the High Energy Lab is now being used to design the Ash Twin project. If you're here to help, or even just to observe, be sure to use the Sunless City path to the lab. Inviting sand inside would disrupt our setup and could have enormous consequences. We realize this is an intriguing prospect, but the door must remain closed nonetheless. So I realized the door did not have an entrance, right, to the High Energy Lab. So I was like, okay, I got to go back down into the Sunless City and find whatever path or trailhead there would be to get to this High Energy Lab. But then I was like, fuck, you know, knowing this game, it's probably the lowest one, right? I tried to maybe get into the High Energy Lab from, this is the crash site caves are down this way. I was like, okay, can I get through here with this ghost matter, right? The Sunless City's right here. Like, I feel like I can get to it. But, of course, there's ghost matter in the way, and I shot my scout, and I realized it was exactly where I needed to walk. And so I was like, okay, let me change routes. Let me go down to the area that I was at earlier with these trees. Let me get back into the Sunless City, which I did. It kind of took me a second to get around the caves again. I don't know. Maybe I forgot a little bit. I got lost for a second. But I eventually got back to the Sunless City. I had to remind myself of some of the markers to get there. And once I got into the Sunless City, I immediately went to where I can turn on the lights, these little columns where you can turn on the lights. And I read Stepping Stone District. No, I didn't want that. High Energy Lab Trailhead, which is the bottommost one. So you kind of have to get there really fucking quick and drop down before the sand raises. So I got down there really fast and I opened up the High Energy Lab door. And then as I started walking through, I thought this was one of the coolest, I don't know, puzzles, if you want to call it puzzles. But like I'm in this area. I'm following this little blue wire thing that obviously leads to the High Energy Lab because we saw it earlier. And I'm walking and I'm like, okay, this will lead me there. And I don't think this place is affected by sand. And then I was like, oh shit, it definitely is affected by sand. And it got to this point where I couldn't really get past this sand column because it was pouring down. And every time I would try and fly through it, I would immediately be pushed down by the sand and directly into those cacti, which I was like, fuck, like I gotta just wait until this sand raises above the cacti so that I can just walk past it. But then it's like a race against time, right? Because like the sand is getting close to the ceiling here and it's just raising. So I was like, fuck, I just gotta like speed through this and you know, get my suit back together because it got punctured. And try and make my way to the next area. But then I was like, oh fuck, it's a dead end. So there's gotta be another way on another side. And again, the sand is raising. I'm kind of like trying to act quickly here. And then I find that, you know, you can get past by kind of moving around some of these rock columns, but there's a lot of dead ends. It feels like a corn maze, right? So I eventually found my way through it, and like right towards the end, right, I got up and I was like, oh shit. So you raise up a couple levels and, you know, I continued following that wire. This area was pushing down, right? I think that this was that ghost matter entrance into the Sunless City that I had found before that I couldn't get down because of that ghost matter. So then I was like, all right, I don't really know where I'm going, but let me just, I guess, follow this path because it will probably lead to the High Energy Lab, right? Like where else would it go? And I start finding some of these destroyed pieces of civilization. I was like, oh, there it is. That's got to be the entrance to the high energy lab. So I rocketed my way up there and I got in. I fucking did it. I got into the high energy lab. So I was really proud of myself here. I was like, oh shit. Like I had a loop that actually, I don't know, I made some progress in, right? So this was kind of the meat of this playthrough, right? Or the meat of this episode is I got a lot of information from this high energy lab. It's like, okay, we got 2 scrolls here. Let's read this first scroll. During this entire thing, I was a little bit worried that maybe this high energy lab would fill up with sand, but it never did. So I was kind of reading quickly. Records show Nomai arriving at the warp receiver on Brittle Hollow very slightly before departing from the White Hole Station. Raimi and I are devising an experiment to test if this is a real phenomenon or a simple machine error. Slow reader over here. In theory, what we want to try is to reproduce a negative amount of time elapsing between something entering the black hole and exiting the white hole at its destination. Initial things first. Our experiment setup will first pair a small black hole core with a small white core to mimic the setup on the White Hole Station, which is the one that we were on Brittle Hollow. Hypothesis. It is possible for an object to exit a white hole before entering the corresponding black hole. These are all things that we kind of knew before, right? From Brittle Hollow when we were using the White Hole Station. I was like, okay, but I guess this is where they researched it. So I put in this other scroll. An update. Our experiment here reproduced the anomaly in arrival and departure times, but Pi is unconvinced that it's more than an equipment error. I hope to strengthen the effect to render it visible to unaided eyes. To that end, we've decided to try adding more energy. I imagine the Sunless City's energy supply should prove sufficient. Of note, Raimi requests that we let him know before we reroute energy to the experiment. I'd hate to leave him in the dark. All available energy has been rerouted from the city to our experiment. Raimi and I are about to run a new test. Hypothesis confirmed. Hypothesis confirmed. I saw it. Pi saw it. Hypothesis confirmed. This is beyond extraordinary. This changes everything. What a beautiful day for the intersection of abstract theory and practical application. So I was like, oh shit. They figured out the white hole thing. They figured it out that, like, yes, there is a negative time interval between when you go into a black hole and exit out a white hole. And I was like, I need to see this hypothesis again. The hypothesis is that it's possible for an object to exit a white hole before entering the black hole, which, if you remember, and this I paused to kind of think this out. If you remember, when we were on Brittle Hollow, we entered the black hole, right? And then we came out the white hole. And then we realized that when we had warped back, there was like a 0.001 second difference, right? Of like negative time, which means that like you could enter the black hole and come out the white hole before you even enter the black hole, which proves that in that time between the black hole and the white hole, there's like a time loop, right? Or there's something that is stopping time or hitching up time, or making time loop in between those things. At least that's what I'm thinking, right? So I was like, okay, let me reroute the energy by moving that ball to what's down there. But then I was like, first, let me read what's going on up here. There's got to be more scrolls and shit, right? And I see these things on the walls, and I'm very confused by them, right? Like, everything just feels like fucking calligraphy. Like, you don't, or what is that word? Is calligraphy the word? Or like cave drawings? Like, I just do not know how to interpret any of the pictures in this game because, like, there's no fucking information. I was like, all right, let me just read this scroll. The Southern Observatory is asking if creating a 22-minute interval is possible. That is, to have something arrive 22 minutes before it is actually sent through the warp. And I was like, oh, fuck. The 22-minute interval, the 22-minute loop, is the loop that I'm experiencing in this game every single day. Like, it feels like about 22 minutes. I think at one point I was like, oh, it's like 30 minutes. 22 sounds more correct, right? So I think even at one point on Giants Deep, I realized that it was 22 minutes, or like at least close to 21 or something like that. So the Southern Observatory is asking if I can make a 22-minute interval, a 22-minute time loop, or asking Raimi if that is possible. I was like, okay, this is the information about the time loop that I need, right? to have something arrive 22 minutes before it is actually sent through the warp. It's like every time I die, I get sent back to the beginning of the warp. We've learned the negative interval of time between departure and arrival can be increased by adding more energy to the warp core. Problematically, the energy required to extend the interval increases at an exponential rate. Hypothesis: creating a 22-minute long interval is possible, but we are currently unable to generate the necessary energy. Raimi and I believe it would be necessary to invent a new method of producing energy, a thrilling but enormous undertaking. We would also require advanced warp technology to be able to handle such energy. We would also likely need an enormous space to fit these proposed new energy and warp technologies together. The only location large enough would be Ash Twin. It's like, okay, so there's some sort of energizing of the warp core that is going on Ash Twin. The energy is currently unavailable, you say? You're a gas, Pi. My pun was unintended, Raimi, so I believe it's whose aeriform. So this was confusing to me. As you can see, my face is very confused there. Maybe there's some sort of gas energy that they're using to power the warp cores. And I kind of was thinking in this moment, there's that station, or whatever you want to call it, that's going around the sun really fast, and it's hard to land on it because you basically just fucking fly your ship into the sun, And I had a feeling, I was like, okay, is that sun station that's there what's creating the energy to power these warp cores? And I don't know how true that is yet, but that was kind of like one of my thoughts. But basically, you need more energy on the warp core to create a longer time loop. And for some reason, they wanted 22 minutes, these Nomai. So Pi says, the Ash Twin project will be one of our biggest undertakings, metaphorically and physically. To build it, we need a way to travel quickly between Ash Twin and each location that holds crucial project materials. What if we used warp towers like the one we have at the Whitehole station to connect Ash Twin directly to each critical location? Of note, each tower on Ash Twin will warp to a different planet. So I was like, oh, on Ash Twin there's fucking teleportation stations. My gratitude to those who noted my imprecise language. Yes, the sun is not a planet. I believe this has been sufficiently clarified. Kindly stop reminding me. We can design each tower to visually reflect its warp destination. The Giant's Deep Tower, for instance, could resemble a cyclone, and we could model the Timber Hearth Tower after a geyser mountain. So I was like, oh. Pokey, Root, and I can begin work on this immediately in the Black Hole Forge. This will keep us busy. So I was like, oh. These fucking towers here are all the warp towers that are located on Ash Twin under the sand until the sand comes off of it, right? So I was like, okay, this one right here is definitely Giant's Deep because it looks like a cyclone. I was kind of confused as to which, the other ones were. It looks like the one with the bubbles right above it is probably Timber Hearth. This one's definitely Ember Twin. I don't necessarily know what this one is yet, right? And the one to the right of this one, right there, is most likely Brittle Hollow. So I was like, oh shit. So there are warp towers on Ash Twin, and once they get uncovered by the ash, you could probably warp from those towers to a different planet. And this is how the Nomai were getting around really fast. So I was like, let me check and see if the sand is raising. And I didn't see sand. And I saw the door to the outside, which it said needed to remain closed. I was like, okay, let me leave that shit closed. And then I was like, okay, now that I've transferred the energy down this way, let's test it. Like, let's test what's going on here. So I moved this ball. And I shot my scout out there, and I was like, did the sand raise high? And I can't see anything. Like, is that sand on the ground, or is this just like a rock area? And then I was like, oh, these are warp cores. Like, I found the warp cores that I needed. So it's like, oh, okay. And I recognized these warp cores were on the floor in those little swirly light sigil things that are on the ground on every fucking planet. So I removed the warp core, and I placed it here. And based on the writing that I had found, I knew that I needed a black hole core as well, along with a white hole core. So I put a black hole core next to a white hole core. And then a black hole and a white hole appeared in this little experimental spot. It's like, oh shit. Okay. And for a second, I like didn't really realize what was happening, right? Like I was shooting my scout in and I was like trying to take pictures like as it was going in and coming out. And I couldn't really like figure out like what I was supposed to be looking at. So I kind of tested a bunch of warp cores to no avail. I put 2 white ones there, put 2 black ones there, and I or maybe I didn't put 2 black ones there because I feel like that would they would suck into each other. But you know, I just kept doing it over and over and over again, and I didn't really realize what I was supposed to be doing. So then I kind of looked back at the hypothesis again. I transferred the energy, you know, back a different way. So if you realize here, if there's no energy that is being transferred, the ship comes out the other end, and it doesn't seem like it's coming out before it goes in, right? There's no energy that's coming down these little veins here. So I was like, okay, hold up. Let me read this again. The hypothesis is that it's possible for an object to exit a white hole before entering the corresponding black hole. So when I was testing it down here, I was like, it doesn't seem like it's coming out the white hole before it goes into the black hole. Like I shoot it into the black hole and then it comes out after. Like, is there really like a negative time interval? And then I was like, wait a minute. It said the more energy you have on the warp core, the more energy that you feed to it, the longer the time interval is. So I was like, okay. So let me try. I guess I tried again. I shot it again and I didn't see anything, right? So I was like, okay, let me try and transfer the energy. I don't know why it's lagging. Oh, because I'm not at the right speed. I reread a couple things. You know, I don't know why I did. I don't know why I reread things again. It says creating a 22-minute time interval. The negative interval can be increased by adding more energy to the warp core. I was like, okay. So I got to go down there and I got to add the energy back. So now there's energy pumping into this warp core, and I shot it and I was like, oh fuck. It's coming out the white hole before it even goes into the black hole. Right? Like you can see it, right? Like you can totally perceive that. Because the energy is coming down into it, I shoot my scout into the... Shoot it again, Giuliano. I shoot the scout into the black hole, and it's coming out the white hole before it even goes into the black hole. So by adding energy, right? By adding energy to it, I realized that like I was creating a negative time interval. So my thought was, this is probably a model of what's happening in the 22-minute time loop that I'm experiencing every day. I was like, oh, this is the sigil I see on all the planets. This is probably where you would warp to, right? And once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I should probably see if I can get over to Ash Twin and see if I can actually do that, and like see if I can actually do any of those teleportations myself. So this is where I was kind of at the beginning of this playthrough. One thing that I didn't do that I wish that I would have done is like looked up in the air to see like where that tower was pumping energy from, because I couldn't really, I didn't really think to look. And as you can see, like these towers here are all pumping energy as well. So I tried to get there by foot first by just like going up high enough in the air, and then I went back to my ship. I moved on over to Ash Twin. I did not have the best landing here. Tried my best. Went over to Ash Twin, punctured my suit immediately, and I was like, okay, here's the warp tower for the Ember Twins right here, because that's what it looks like, right? It's twins. And then I was like, I can't tell if these are bodies or if they're just suits. Like, it's so unclear if they're just suits or if they're bodies, but fucking maybe they're bodies. I don't know. And I was kind of looking around to see if there was like any way that I could warp, and I don't know, I was just confused by these warp towers. There's an empty scroll location here. I couldn't find a scroll anywhere around the Ember Twins, right? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking at here, but it seems like these are the warp towers. How do you use them? I don't fucking know. So I was like, okay, let me go over to this one, right? Like, what is this warp tower? So I found my way to this warp tower. noticed that I didn't really know what I was supposed to be looking for here either. It's like, okay, let me go to the one that I know goes to Giant's Deep. Like, as you can see, that one totally looks like a cyclone. So I've been to Giant's Deep. I know where the warp place is on Giant's Deep. So let me see if I can get there. So, I'm inside this warp tower. And I had been here before in the previous episode, but I didn't really know what I was looking at. I didn't know if I was looking at a warp tower or not. So went up and around. Found my way in. And at this point, I'm probably getting close to the end of the time loop, right? And I was like, okay, I have to stand on the black hole. And then I have to look up. And then there's Giant's Deep right there. Boom. I warp to it. So you can see that again, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to look up and through this little scope. Oh, I was like, oh, there's Giant's Deep. What if it's like right when you're in that, the little scope, it warps you to Giant's Deep. And it fucking did. I was like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm at Giant's Deep. But then I realized that if I stand here for too long, like if I leave this area and then walk back, like it can warp you back immediately, right? Like once you activate it, it activates that little circular thing that's on the ground that kind of rises out of the air and it says like, return warp ready. And I immediately returned warped. And then I couldn't get back to Giant's Deep. And I was kind of frustrated because I was like, fuck, like I didn't really realize what happened. Like all of a sudden I was back on Ash Twin. But I performed a warp. I did it, right? So then I was like, fuck, let me go to the Brittle Hollow one. This one looks like Brittle Hollow. So let me get there really quickly, right? And I started reading a projection stone that was in here. There's a projection stone on the first floor. So I started reading it. Here's our first delivery, Yarrow. 1 warp core fresh from the Black Hole Forge. Root is installing this core's sibling on Brittle Hollow as I write this. My gratitude, Clary. With this, the Ashwin project is complete. I confess I'm deeply curious about what you and Pokey found on the Whitehole station that started this project. Could I visit sometime and learn more? I recommend you do. So at this point, here's what happened. I started hearing the sound of the time loop ending. So I was like, fuck. Let me just translate all this really fast, not read it, and look in my ship log afterwards. So what's good about now is that I'm rewatching it. I can just fucking pause. I can pause and I can read it. I actually was not able to read this until right now because I was afraid that the time loop was going to end and it wasn't going to get into my ship log. So I was like, let me just update my ship log by reading this and then I'll look in my ship log later. So this is probably important information. I confess I'm deeply curious about what you and Pokey found on the Whitehole station that started this project. Could I visit sometime to learn more? I recommend you do. The Whitehole station is the model for the towers being built for the Ash Twin project, so a visit to the station would be doubly useful. I've been to the Whitehole station, and I've warped with the Whitehole station, and there's some connection to warping and this Ash Twin project, which also has to do with containing their memories with masks and the statues. So then Yarrow says, I suppose more precisely, I would like to visit the Whitehole station with you, Clary. Yarrow, stop using this scroll wall to flirt with my sister. In romantic matters, her density rivals a neuron star's, and go meet her on the Whitehole station. I'd be happy to explain our findings. Oh no, what happened there? Did my shit glitch out and I can't see what that last one says, or is that just VLC being VLC? Yeah. I missed that last one still. I did that one so quickly that I can't really. Let me just go slow-mo here. As you can see, my scout launcher is fucking already destroyed by the sun exploding, which I'm assuming is a supernova. And I wish I could wait here for you to arrive. But the forge and my unfinished work there is calling. I will return with more material soon. So my thought at this point was like, can I get to the Black Hole Forge? Can I get to the Black Hole Forge by warping there? and warping there from the Brittle Hollow station. So that honestly will probably be my next mission, is to go straight back to, I gotta wait till the Ash uncovers it, but to go back to Ash Twin, go to that Brittle Hollow warp tower, and see if when I warp to Brittle Hollow, it takes me to the Black Hole Forge. It shouldn't, right? Because there is a black hole, white hole sigil on that planet. So then at the end of this episode, I was just like, okay, let me review my ship log. Okay, so we're going to review it here. We learned about the Lakebed Cave, the wandering rock that was first spotted in a cave at the bottom of the dry lakebed at Ember Twin's North Pole. A Nomai named Coleus mysteriously vanished from a cave at the bottom of the dry lakebed at Ember Twin's North Pole. Why he vanished, we don't know. There are quantum caves, right? The Nomai noticed a strange wandering rock that appeared in multiple caves at Ember Twin's northern hemisphere. I found a strange rock shard that moves around while not watching. It emits a signal on the quantum fluctuations frequency. We know about quantum moon shards. We know that they move when you don't look at them. High Energy Lab. The Nomai successfully reproduced the temporal anomaly first observed at the Whitehole Station. Warped objects appear to arrive before they depart. The Nomai discovered that they could increase the negative time interval between arrival and departure by adding energy to the warp cores. And the Nomai wanted to know if a 22-minute negative time interval was possible. My question here was like, why 22 minutes? Why specifically 22 minutes? Why do you want to know if you can reproduce a 22-minute time interval? They concluded it would require new technology and produce the necessary energy as well as an advanced warp core to handle those energies. Ash Twin was proposed as a location for this project. We explored a little bit of Ash Twin, right? We explored those warp cores, and there's probably the advanced warp core, right, to get the necessary energy on Ash Twin. But again, I feel like it has something to do with that sun station, which is also in my ship log now, and I don't really remember like finding anything about the sun station. We found the Ash Twin tower designs, right? That each tower is designed to visually reflect its warp destination, and every tower warps to every different planet, but not the sun. And these towers allowed the Nomai to quickly travel between Ash Twin and all other locations that were crucial to the Ash Twin project. I think good game design that like you can't get to these warp towers right away, because then I think you could cheese the game by going straight to Ash Twin and then warping to another area. Sun Station. The Nomai debated building a sun station in order to power the Ash Twin project. And I feel like I've seen a station that's been like moving around the sun this entire time. And who fucking knows if that's what's powering the Ash Twin project. Then we have the Sunless City, which we had found underneath the ground. The Nomai city built into the walls of a huge underground cavern. The city is divided vertically into 4 districts, kind of similar to the Hanging City, right? The Nomai debated building a sun station in order to power the Ash Twin project. Several Nomai opposed its construction, arguing that failure could result in the destruction of the solar system. So I was thinking, okay, is the point of this game, is the thesis of this game that the more we pursue new technology, that we can destroy the entire world? Because what it seems like is that this sun station, it seems like the sun is exploding at the end of every time loop, because the sun disappears and it turns blue. Probably a big supernova. So my thought is, like, is it because these Nomai were trying to pursue the eye and find the eye and do the Ash Twin project, which is connected in some way that I don't know yet? Connected with those memories, with those warp towers, with creating a 22-minute time loop. Did they accidentally fucking destroy the entire solar system by doing this? But then my thought was like, well, I wake up every time loop and I remember, every single time loop that I've been through. So all of those mysteries are kind of yet to be solved, but the outline of a story and of a thesis statement for this game is kind of forming in my head. Then it says the Nomai traveled to the solar system in pursuit of the Eye of the Universe, which is older than the universe itself. And maybe this is what's allowing me to remember things, right? Between every time loop, is that the Eye of the Universe is older than the universe itself. But it seems like this project resulted in the death of everything. And I think it has to do with the sun station being so close to the sun, because they said, well, that's really risky, Chert's there, my favorite guy in astronomy gear, and he's seen a lot of supernova lately, right? So maybe that's related as well. One of these 3 Nomai escape pods, we saw that one, right? Part of the vessel, which is stuck on dark bramble. We found a cave with an anglerfish fossil, but its opening is only big enough for the scout. And the Nomai know how to evade these anglerfish, theoretically, by studying them after they found this fossil on Ember Twin. I think these anglerfish are on dark bramble because when I shot the scout into that portal that was on Timberhearth, it seemed to be there. The Nomai crafted warp cores at the Black Hole Forge before delivering them from Ash Twin. We found the Ash Twin Towers, right? The White Hole Station was used as a model for these towers. There's more to explore there. We'll probably go back to those Ash Twin Towers, of course. And the Nomai plan to construct technology capable of producing a 22-minute time interval on Ash Twin. Why, though? Why 22 minutes? That's the question. And why am I experiencing that time loop in the entire solar system and not just on Ash Twin? I don't know. Subsurface energy readings. The shuttle's equipment heard strange energy readings coming from somewhere beneath the surface. 2 Nomai located a fissure in the ice on Interloper's sunward side. They descended inside to investigate. I don't remember reading this. This was probably last episode. But it seems like landing on Interloper and going inside Interloper and diving deep into the glacier of Interloper, there's some sort of energy that's coming from beneath the surface there. I landed on Interloper once and then immediately fucking fell into the sun. A huge cylindrical structure that generates a strong upward gravity field is the gravity cannon. And we have those Nomai shuttles that shoot out from the gravity cannon. And my thought was like, I still haven't figured out what those gravity cannons, like the purpose of them are, because I kind of just like shoot out into the atmosphere and there's nothing that comes from it. But that is basically where I ended off on this episode. And then I immediately fucking realized that I had no audio, you know. But this has been the commentary episode of Outer Wilds. At the end of this episode, I went to the sigil that's on Timberhearth to see if I could warp, but it's a white hole, and the white hole is the end of the warp. You got to get into a black hole first, so I figured there's probably no way. And then I just meditated until the next loop, and that was the end. But this has been the commentary episode. We wildin', and I will make sure to not fuck up my audio next time. But I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that was somewhat bearable for you. We ride, baby! We wildin'!